Hi, my name is Sarah Zeiner, and I'm going to be presenting on Chapter 8, Linear Kinematics. So what is biomechanics? It's a quantitative field of study in exercise science that applies several mechanical principles to the human body. Quantitative is a numeric evaluation rather than describing the quality of something. It identifies the source of the movement. It includes kinematics, kinetics, and even some kinesiology and functional anatomy. And we're going to be talking about the linear part of kinematics, which is position, velocity, and acceleration. So what is kinematics? It's a characteristics of motion from a spatial or temporal perspective without explaining force. So specifically, linear kinematics, aka translation or translational motion, is along a straight or curved path in which all points in the body move the same distance in the same amount of time. So right here is an example of a gymnast doing a backflip on a curved path, and that is considered a linear motion. So how do we collect kinematic data? We use vectors and scalars. Scalars measure mass, distance, and volume by magnitude, while vectors are described by magnitude and direction. They're represented by an arrow with magnitude, and the magnitude is the length of the line. And these vectors can be added, subtracted, multiplied, or broken down. So here's an example of what a vector looks like. So the length of the line is the magnitude, and the direction of the arrow is the direction. So position and displacement. Position is the object's location in space relative to a reference. So the reference that is usually used is a 2D plane. The length is used to measure an object on the axis. So for example, using this 2D reference system, someone on a 10-meter platform that is 10 meters away from the water. So you move the 10 spaces to the right because it is in the positive direction, and then 10 spaces up, and the red dot is where the position that the person is in. So displacement and distance. Displacement is measured in a straight line from one position to another, which is usually like a start to a finish line, and it's a vector quantity. Distance is the total distance traveled on a path, and this doesn't necessarily mean it's in a straight line, and this is a scalar quantity. So here's an example of using distance and displacement. So here's the path taken, so that's the distance, and the displacement is the start to the finish in a straight line. Velocity and speed. Speed is a scalar quantity, describes only the magnitude, and it's the distance traveled divided by time it took to travel. So here's a picture of that equation. Velocity is a vector quantity, so it describes magnitude and direction. It is the time rate of change of position. So here's a picture of that equation. In example, Bob runs 100 meters to the left in 25 seconds, so find his velocity. So since velocity is displacement over time, we do 100 meters divided by 25 seconds, and since he is moving in the direction left, it is a negative value, so negative 4 meters per second. It's negative because moving to the left, and we can show that on a grid if we wanted to by moving it 4 spaces to the left. Okay, so slope is rise over run. If the slope is large, then velocity is going to be large. If the slope is 0, velocity is 0. Vectors can be positive or negative, therefore slope and velocity can be positive or negative. So that's what we saw in the previous example with a negative value. Acceleration. Human motion requires different velocities that change multiple times. The rate of which velocity changes can be related to the forces that cause those movements. This is acceleration, the rate of change of velocity in respects to time. Also a vector, and it can be increasing or decreasing. So here's the equation for acceleration. So we can think of acceleration like a car moving or someone running. They're not going to keep the same speed at the same time usually, because they decelerate to finish, might accelerate faster at the beginning. So linear kinematics of running. This involves stride parameters. So a stride is the interval from one event on one limb, and completing that stride is making the same movement on that same limb. So like heel contact of the right limb to the next contact of the right heel. Yes. Step is portion of the stride of action on one limb to the next limb. So this is an example. So this is one full stride, right heel contact, right heel contact. This is one step, left heel contact to the right heel contact. Continued, stride length and stride rate are most common parameters studied. The relationship between these two are that running speed equals stride length times stride rate. Velocity can be increased by increasing one of these variables or both. As velocity increases, these variables increase linearly from a slow jog up until about 7 meters per second. Once we reach that 7 meters per second, increasing stride frequency is the most commonly used. You can only increase your stride length by so much according to your leg length and your size. Okay. The running stride can be further subdivided into support, or your stance, and your swing, or when your foot is off the ground. These times on the ground during the swing phase differ according to the speed that you are going. So percent of time spent in the support phase or the stance phase when your feet are on the ground decrease as speed increases. So when you're walking, you spend about 60% in your stance phase, 40% in your swing phase. For jogging, your support phase is around 68%, for moderate 54%, and for a sprint 47%. In a 2011 study, on semi-professional football players, they performed running at incremental speeds on a treadmill. They found that only stride length really had the most significantly positive impact with maximizing running velocity. So why is that the case? It is the distance covered in one stride. So the more distance is covered when you take a longer stride, which makes sense. The more distance you cover per stride. The combination of stride length and stride frequency give running velocity. Runners use the perfect combination of these two variables to result in the best running speed according to their size and their body. Projectile motion. This is the motion of bodies projected into the air, and gravity and air resistance act on it. Gravity results in constant vertical acceleration of the projectile, which is it coming to the Earth's surface. Trajectory is the flight path of a projectile. Factors that affect this trajectory are projection angle, projection velocity, and projection height. An example of these three variables can be seen in a basketball shot. The projection velocity by the vector, the projection angle, and the projection height. So increasing the velocity of projection increases the range of the throw more substantially than increasing either the angle or the height. So when we increase the angle of 40 degrees from a height of 2.2 meters, the distance of the throw is 22 meters. But when you increase the velocity from 14 meters per second to 15.4 meters per second, it results in a throw of 26.2 meters. And that is substantially larger than 22 meters. So putting all of these together, position, velocity, and acceleration, this can be seen in football. Sorry about that.
From big and bulldozing to small and speedy, NFL running backs come in many shapes and sizes. But to succeed at football, all running backs must excel at kinematics, the branch of classical mechanics that defines how objects move.
Because kinematics describes motion, it describes everything an NFL running back does, basically, which is his motion up the field as he tries to score.
Kinematics uses three concepts to define motion: position, velocity, and acceleration. Position defines location within a space, such as the surface of a football field.
Position would be a running back's location on the field, and he can change that with his motion.
In this play, let's define the running back's position where he takes the handoff. After executing the play, however, his new position is his opponent's end zone.
The position relative to the goal line changes the set of options that the running back has in terms of the direction he chooses to run.
A second kinematic concept is velocity, which describes both the direction and speed of the running back. In the NFL, one-way speed is measured is a player's time in the 40-yard dash.
A long time ago, almost right at 10 years ago, my 40-yard dash was 4.26.
To help illustrate the concepts of kinematics, Deuce McAllister, all-time leading rusher for the New Orleans Saints, ran the 40-yard dash in front of a high-speed Phantom camera.
You want to stay low as possible while running the 40, particularly the first 10 yards. So it's literally like you're being shot out of a cannon.
Using McAllister's personal best in the 40, 4.26 seconds, it's easy to calculate his speed. Divide the distance by the time to get his average speed, 9.39 yards per second, or 28.17 feet per second. To define the velocity, simply add a direction, 28.17 feet per second north.
When we talk about speed, we're talking about the magnitude of velocity, and then its direction is dictated by where the running back goes.
On the field, great speed is used to elude tacklers.
When you have speed and you have very good speed, that 5-yard play for most backs becomes a 50-yard play.
Also helpful is the ability to cut or suddenly change directions.
That helps you make moves against a defender. That helps you stay free from getting tackled.
Beyond position and velocity, the third kinematic concept is acceleration, which describes how fast speed is changing.
You never know when you may need to hit that button, per se, to accelerate at maximum speed.
To understand acceleration, consider again McAllister's 40-yard dash. While his average speed is 28.17 feet per second, his instantaneous speed varies. He starts with 0 speed and then increases his speed or accelerates until he reaches a top speed, let's say hypothetically 31.5 feet per second. If we know how long it takes McAllister to hit his top speed, let's assume 1.2 seconds, then it's possible to calculate his acceleration as the change in speed divided by the time.
Acceleration is the change in velocity per unit time, which if we compare it to velocity was the change in distance per unit time.
In this case, 31.5 feet per second divided by 1.2 seconds means that McAllister's acceleration was 26.25 feet per second squared.
We want to reach our top velocity as quickly as possible. Someone with very low acceleration might take 5 yards to reach top velocity, while someone with great acceleration might be able to reach top velocity in half that distance.
On the playing field, acceleration, or the ability to reach top speed quickly, may be a running back's most potent weapon.
If you can accelerate, you're going to get to top speed, even if your top speed isn't as fast as the guy that's faster than you. You're going to beat him to his top speed. Therefore, you're going to be more successful than he is.
Without kinematics and its concepts of position, velocity, and acceleration, NFL running backs would be easy prey, and football itself wouldn't be nearly as fun to watch.
Is it good? Okay. So as you can see, these three variables, position, velocity, and acceleration, play a role in football. Of course, many other things are accounted for to reach optimal performance. Okay, so why is it important to study kinematics? It minimizes the risk of injury and improves sport performance. It describes skeletal, muscular, and neurological aspects of movements. It is the ability to study sport or movement techniques. It is an analysis of body loading to determine the safest method for performing an activity. It is the assessment of muscular recruitment and loading. It is an analysis of sport and exercise equipment, and it can help correct any abnormalities in biomechanics. And here are my references. Thank you.